Good Wednesday morning to you. Today we're going to continue on this journey of can you relate to some of the most profound characters of the Old Testament narrative. As we've been moving through 2 Kings, talking about the different kingships, the leaders that filled both the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom's thrones, we've also been focused a little bit about the prophetic voices that spoke into their leadership. Today I want to turn to Micah. Micah is a contemporary of Isaiah. He's younger. He's a little less refined than Isaiah. He comes from the workforce, so you might wonder if in Micah's journey that he is part of some of the slave labor, or at least has that within his family history, family of origin. And so when we look at the book of Micah, what we're really looking at is chapter 16 of Kings and on. It's when Ahaz is king of the southern kingdom. And there are two sections of Micah. Some scholars say that it's Micah and a scribe that writes these two sections and it becomes one book. Others argue, no, they're both part of Micah. Honestly, we have no idea. But you'll notice that there's a shift in the middle of Micah. So there's that prophetic voice. There is consequences for your sin. That happens in chapter 3 of Micah. Hear this, you rulers of the house of Jacob and chiefs of the house of Israel, who abhor justice and pervert equity, who build Zion with blood and Jerusalem with wrong. This is 9 and 10, verses 9 and 10 of chapter 3 of Micah. Micah does something that's pretty profound here. In verse 12 of chapter 3, Micah foretells the destruction of the temple. Therefore, because you, Zion, shall be plowed as a field, Jerusalem shall become a heap of ruins, and the mountain of the house a wooden height. That's the destruction of the temple. You know, this is going to be used with Jeremiah, right? Because Micah is one of the first to prophesy that the temple is going to be destroyed. They use this to refute Jeremiah later. There's this idea that punishment for your sin could be a ramification so great it would actually destroy the very thing, the very essence of how the people were called to worship God. If you remember, Solomon built the temple so that essentially God could be contained, that God would have a place to dwell on earth. So when Micah speaks into that and saying, because of your sin, the very temple is going to be destroyed, people start to wonder, well, wait a minute, I thought that's where God dwells. Is God destroying God's self? Does God no longer dwell with us? It's a harsher message than what the people have been called to hear. Then if you flip ahead and you get to chapter 6, God is really challenging Israel. And reminiscent of Amos, what we talked about earlier in the week, we have Micah talking about justice and love. In chapter 6, verse 8, probably one of the more familiar passages in this book. He has told you, O mortal, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To do justice and love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. At the end of Micah, we have language that is indicative of calling the Messiah. And so sometimes Micah is used in the Advent season foretelling that a Messiah promise will come. But the whole point of the prophetic voice of Micah is to get the people to turn away, to pay attention that God is at work in the world, not just to rely on the rulers of the times, but to see that even the rulers and the kingdoms of this world can lead us astray. Chapter 5 is the foretelling of the Messiah, a ruler from Bethlehem. And it's both talking about a ruler from Bethlehem in the moment, but also foreshadowing in what is yet to come. And so often in the Advent season, we will read texts out of chapter 5 of Micah. So, in this somewhat short and a little bit obscure minor prophet, how can you relate? That's the series. Well, I think the message here specifically is for us to really assess where we ground our faith. Pastor Tom used the analogy or the metaphor of, keeping your sight focused. What is in your sight? And that's a great reminder of, where our focus is, that's the place we tend to put all of our energy. That's the road we tend to travel. It's indicative of a text that Jesus will proclaim, that where your heart is, there your or where your treasure is, there your heart will be as well. That idea that when we ground ourselves in things of this world, we tend to put our trust in things of this world. When we ground ourselves in God, the things of this world don't seem to matter as much as they might to someone who fully has grounded themselves in the things of this world. On this Wednesday, can you relate? Can you relate to a prophetic voice speaking into your life, calling on you to assess, to look at your life and say, where is my trust? Where is my hope? Whom am I following? Am I caught up in what the rulers of this world are doing? Am I obsessed with what's happening in Washington, D.C.? Or am I grounding myself in God's word and responding to the politics, to the circumstances of culture through the lens that God gives us in his word? We are called to love and have mercy and do justice. We're called into that. But we're called to do that out of response of our faithfulness to God. We are following a path God has set before us. And really, that's the importance of Micah. It's the importance of Micah then. It's the importance of Micah for us today. So can you relate? Can you relate to a voice calling for you to look at your life, assess where your priorities are, where your treasures are, what your expectation is? Can you relate to how God's speaking profoundly in you? Again, the cool detail about Micah is he's a contemporary of Isaiah. He's younger, he's less experienced, yet God had a pretty profound message for him to speak to the people. So no matter how young or old you might be, God has a profound message for you as well, to speak into your own life and the lives of those around you. Hope you have a good Wednesday.